Hello and welcome everyone. Today I'll be talking about pathologies of the prostate. Prostate is an important organ of the male urogenital system. It is located below the urinary bladder and it is periurethral in location. The urethra it encloses is known as prostatic urethra. It is a fibromuscular gland that it is composed of fibrous tissue and muscular tissue, and it has got no capsule. Its weight is around 20 grams and its function is to secrete the prostatic secretions. The prostatic secretions, they are rich in proteolytic enzymes, lipids, acid phosphatase. It helps in the liquefaction of the semen, and the growth of prostatic cells, prostatic glands, prostatic stroma is under the control of testicular androgens. So another important thing about prostate is its zones. So the prostate is divided into various zones and they have got their own significance. So first zone is transitional zone. This zone is present around the urethra. It is in the periurethral location, and adjacent to it is the central zone. Central zone is present in between the ejaculatory ducts. Then outermost is the peripheral zone, and this is located posteriorly, and anteriorly there is fibromuscular stroma. So it is important to know about these zones because you will study that an important lesion of prostate, which is benign prostatic hyperplasia, it is seen most commonly in the transitional zone of prostate, while another lesion, carcinoma of the prostate gland, it is seen most commonly in the peripheral zone. So it is important to know about these prostatic zones. So in this video, we will see the different zones in prostate. So this is the urethra. This is transitional zone in the periurethral location. Then this zone is important because it is enlarged in BPH. Then there is a central zone in between the ejaculatory ducts. The outermost is the peripheral zone. And anteriorly is the anterior fibromuscular stroma. So these are the important zones of prostate. Now next we come to the histology of prostate. Again, it is very important to know the normal histology of prostate to understand the pathologies of prostate. So what comes in the normal histology? The prostate is made up of two components. One is gland and other is stroma. So these are the prostatic glands. The prostatic glands, they are lined by two layers of epithelium. The inner layer is columnar and the outer layer is cuboidal. So there is double layer in the lining of the glands of prostate. So and in the center of the gland, this is the lumen and it is containing the prostatic secretions. So sometimes the prostatic secretions, they become dehydrated and they become condensed like this, and then they are called corpora amylacea. So this is the normal finding in prostate gland. And the second component is the stroma. The stroma is fibromuscular. It means it is composed of two components. One is fibrous tissue and other is the smooth muscle tissue. So the stroma, it provides support to the prostate and is composed of fibrous tissue and muscle tissue. Now prostate is affected mainly by three kinds of diseases. First is inflammation. Inflammations, they can be caused by various infections. Inflammation of prostate is known as prostatitis. It can be acute prostatitis, it can be chronic bacterial prostatitis, it can be chronic abacterial prostatitis, and prostate can also be affected by granulomatous prostatitis. Next very important lesion is benign prostatic hyperplasia. It is the most common lesion which is seen in prostate, and amongst the neoplasm, prostatic carcinoma can be seen in prostate. So we will talking about benign prostatic hyperplasia, also known as nodular hyperplasia. It is a very important topic from theory as well as practical point of view. So BPH is most common benign prostatic disease in men over 50 years of age, and it is nodular hyperplasia. The prostate becomes nodular in shape, so it is called nodular. And hyperplasia means increase in the number of cells. So the prostatic cells, they increase in number. The prostatic glands, prostatic stroma, it increases in number. And because of that, because of the nodular enlargement of the prostate, there will be partial or complete obstruction of the urethra. And important point is that it is not a pre-malignant condition. Though the cells are proliferating, but it is not susceptible to mutations causing any malignancy. So it is not a pre-malignant condition. Another important point, very important point for MCQ point of view and Viva point of view, that which zone of prostate the BPH involves. It involves the periurethral transitional zone. So transitional zone is involved by BPH. Now, since it causes the obstruction of the prostatic urethra, so it will produce urinary symptoms. It will produce obstructive and irritative symptoms, and BPH is a part of normal aging process, and it is seen in 70% of the cases of the males by the age of 60 years, and in 90% of males by the age of 80 years. So it is a normal aging process. It occurs because there is more effect of dihydrotestosterone on the growth of the prostate. So let's try to understand the pathogenesis of benign prostatic hyperplasia. It is a normal aging process seen in males, and we should know, first of all, we should know that the growth of prostate is dependent on the testosterone and dihydrotestosterone. So in the stromal cells, there is an enzyme type 2 5-alpha reductase. The function of this enzyme is to convert testosterone to dihydrotestosterone. So testosterone and dihydrotestosterone, they both are responsible for the growth of the prostatic glands and prostatic stroma, but DHT is more potent than testosterone because it has a higher affinity to bind to the androgen receptors, and it has the DHT and the androgen receptors, it forms a more stable complex. So DHT is more potent than testosterone. So although the levels of testosterone decreases in the males with age, but the type 2 alpha 5 reductase activity increases with age. Because of this, more DHT is formed, and it acts on the stromal cells and the glandular cells to cause the transcription of various growth factors, and these growth factors will increase the number of these cells, and they will also inhibit the apoptosis of these cells, so overall increase in the growth of the prostatic tissue. So pathogenesis is that the 5-alpha reductase type 2, which is present in the stromal cells of prostate, converts testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, and it is more potent, and it binds to the androgen receptors, leads to transcription of the growth factors, and that will lead to increase in the number of cells of prostatic tissue, and it will also decrease the death of the epithelial cells. It will decrease the apoptosis of these cells. So overall growth of the prostate gland will increase. And there is an interesting observation that if a male is castrated, either the testis is surgically removed or it is removed medically by use of some certain drugs, then that male does not have the development of BPH, because then he will have no androgens and no testosterone, so it will not lead to increased growth of the prostatic gland. So this is the pathogenesis of benign prostatic hyperplasia. And one more important point is that type 1 5-alpha reductase, it is seen in the liver and skin, and it will also lead to increased DHT levels in the blood, and they can also act on prostate in an endocrine manner, leading to the increased growth of prostate. So next we come to the gross examination of the prostatic hyperplasia. So when a patient has nodular enlargement of the prostate, the weight of the prostate will increase. Normal weight was about 20 grams. Now in BPH the weight increases between 60 to 100 grams. There is nodular enlargement of prostates. You see that prostatic tissue is increasing in number, and they are forming nodules in the prostate, and this nodular enlargement can compress the wall of the urethra. So see this is the transverse section of prostate, and see these are the nodules which are formed in the prostate because of the increased growth of the prostatic tissue, and this is compressing this urethra. So you see the urethra here has become slit like, and the compressed prostatic tissue at the periphery, it forms a false capsule. So this is the gross description which is seen in case of nodular enlargement of the prostate. Then again, two types of appearance can be seen in the cut section. So if the nodules that are seen in the prostate, if they contain more of glands, then the cut surface will be yellowish pink and soft, and it will exude a milky white prostatic fluid. But if the nodules, they are composed of more of the stromal element, Then the nodules on cut surface, they will give a pale grey and tough appearance. So the appearance on the cut surface will depend whether the glandular component is proliferating more or the stromal component is proliferating more. So these two types of appearances can be seen on cut section. Next we come to the microscopy. So microscopy is, there is just hyperplasia of the normal prostatic tissue. So what is present in the normal prostatic tissue? First is the glands and second is the stroma. So there will be proliferation of the glands and proliferation of the fibromuscular stroma. So we will see the glandular proliferation in the form of aggregation of small to large sized cystically dilated glands which are lined by two layers of cells, as is seen in the normal prostatic histology. So we will see numerous glands, and these glands will be lined by two layers, the inner columnar and outer cuboidal, and this is the stroma. So see here again, this is the picture. These are the numerous glands which are lying back to back because they are proliferating and they are forming a nodule, and inside this, these glands are proliferating. These are dilated, cystically dilated, and they contain some secretions in the center of these glands. So basically the normal prostatic tissue is seen in BPH, but it is increased in number. There is just hyperplasia. There is hyperplasia of gland and there is hyperplasia of stroma. And very important point is that the lining epithelium will be double layered as it is seen in the normal prostatic gland. And this point is important because in prostatic carcinoma there is only single lining epithelium. Now next we come to the complications of BPH. Now when BPH has occurred, there is prostatic enlargement. So this is the normal prostate and this is the normal prostatic urethra, and this is the flow of the urine. But when there is enlarged prostate, nodular enlargement of prostate, then there is obstruction of the prostatic urethra and there will be urinary obstruction. And when there is urinary obstruction, there will be retention of some urine in the urinary bladder. And because of this stasis of this urine in the urinary bladder, there can be inflammation and infections which can occur in the urinary bladder. Then additionally, what can happen, because there is retention of urine in the urinary bladder, the bladder will try to expel that urine out. Because of that, there will be hypertrophy of the muscle cells in the wall of the urinary bladder. So there will be hypertrophy of the muscle cells in the wall of the urinary bladder. And lastly, because of again the stasis of urine, there can be formation of stones in the urinary bladder. So these are the various complications: urinary obstruction, urinary retention, inflammation or infection, then hypertrophy of the bladder wall, and urolithiasis, that is formation of stone. Now it can cause various distressing symptoms which are known as lower urinary tract symptoms. So BPH is problematic, though it is a physiological enlargement of the prostatic gland, but it is clinically, it produces worrisome symptoms which are known as lower urinary tract symptoms, and because of these symptoms the patient goes to the for help from the doctor. So what are the types of symptoms which will be seen in BPH? First are the voiding symptoms, which are caused because of the enlarged prostate causing obstruction of the prostatic urethra. So patient will have a weak urinary stream, then he will take more than the usual time for voiding of urine. Then he will have to strain for urination. Then hesitancy. So there is hesitation in initiation of the urinary flow. Then there is intermittency. So the stream of the urine will not be continuous, it will be intermittent. It will start, then it will stop, then again start, stop. Then there will be a feeling of incomplete bladder emptying. Even after urination, he will feel that bladder has not completely emptied. Then there will be terminal and post-void dribbling. After having urination, he will have dribbling of the urine from the urethra. Then the second set of symptoms are the storage symptoms, and these storage symptoms arise because the bladder is overactive. There is overactive bladder because of the hypertrophy of the muscle of the urinary bladder. So these symptoms are frequency, because these muscles will contract, of the bladder muscles will contract. There will be increased frequency of urine. Then there is incomplete emptying of the urinary bladder. So patient also feels the need to go for urination in the night. This is called nocturia. Then there is urgency. So he cannot hold urine for long. This is called urgency. And incontinence is continuous dribbling of the urine. So these are the various distressing symptoms of benign prostatic hyperplasia, because of which the patient has to seek treatment. And when he comes to the doctor, so there is a how does he assess the symptoms of the patient? By the International Prostatic Symptom Score, IPSS. So he will ask various questions and scores will be given. For example, for incomplete emptying, he will ask that how often have you had the sensation of not emptying your bladder. For frequency, he will ask how often you have had urinate less than every 2 hours. For urgency, he will ask how often have you found it difficult to postpone the urination. Similarly, many questions are there in IPSS. So the scores are given. So between 1 to 7, the symptoms will be mild, 8 to 19 moderate, 20 to 35 severe. So depending on this score, the doctor will decide what treatment has to be given. Now next we come to the diagnosis. So diagnosis is based on, first of all, clinical signs and symptoms. Secondary, per rectal examination. Thirdly, imaging, which includes ultrasound of the prostate. Then serum prostate specific antigen levels. So PSA, we will talk about it a little later. PSA is secreted by the luminal cells of the prostatic glands, and they are also used as an important tumor marker for prostatic carcinoma. So next we come to the treatment. So treatment, when you understand the pathogenesis of BPH, it is easy to understand the treatment also. It is also important in the pharma. So in the medical management, what do? We give two types of drugs. First is alpha-1 adrenergic receptor antagonist, like prazosin. These antagonists, they bind to the receptors present on the smooth muscles of the bladder wall, of the urethra and of the prostatic stroma, and they decrease the tone of those muscles. So this will decrease the irritative symptoms of the BPH, which are because of the increased tone of the smooth muscles. So this is the first set of drugs that we give, alpha-1 adrenergic receptor antagonist. Example is prazosin. And second important drug is 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, such as finasteride. So 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, it will inhibit the type 2 5-alpha reductase, and this will inhibit the conversion of testosterone to DHT. So when less DHT will be formed, so it will not be able to bind to the androgen receptors on the stromal and epithelial cells, and it will ultimately decrease the growth of these cells. So these are the two important classes of drugs that we give for the treatment of BPH. Next is the surgical management. If the patient is not being able to treat by the medical management, so the surgeon will opt for the surgical management. And surgical management, what do? We do TURP. Most commonly TURP is done. It is transurethral resection of prostate. So a resectoscope is passed through the urethra to reach the prostate, and the chips of prostate, they are removed from the prostate, and it is decreased so that the prostate decreases in size and it causes less compression of the prostatic urethra. So this is called transurethral resection of prostate, and these types of chips, they are obtained after this procedure. And after that, since we are going through the prostatic urethra, so after few days, this area will reepithelize. Again, the prostatic urethra will undergo epithelialization. Now the key points of BPH. BPH is characterized by proliferation of the benign stromal and glandular elements. So DHT is very important. It is androgen derived from testosterone, and it is the major hormonal stimulus for the proliferation of the glands and stroma of prostate. Second point, the BPH most commonly affects the transitional zone of the prostate, which is periurethral in location, and because of that, it produces the nodules that compress the prostatic urethra. On microscopic examination, the nodules exhibit proportions of stroma and glands, and these hyperplastic glands, they are lined by two cell layers. Inner cell layer is columnar and outer layer composed of flattened to cuboidal cells. The clinical symptoms and signs are reported by 10% of the affected patient, include hesitancy, urgency, nocturia, poor urinary stream. Chronic obstruction predisposes to recurrent UTIs, and acute urinary obstruction may also occur. So BPH is a very important topic, and you should know the various aspects of BPH. Next we come to prostatic cancer. So prostatic cancer, most common prostatic cancer to occur is adenocarcinoma. Adenocarcinoma occurs in prostate because the basic structure used read in histology, it is the glands are there. So that will give rise to the adenocarcinoma, and it is most common male cancer seen worldwide, and it is seen in the elderly age group, more than 50 years of age, and it is second most common cause of cancer death in male, next to the lung carcinoma. So many prostatic carcinomas, they are small and clinically insignificant, and various factors, they affect the pathogenesis of prostatic cancer, like age, race, family history, hormone levels, environmental influences, and again androgens, they play an important role in prostatic cancer. So castration and androgen blockade, it has been associated with regression of this disease, and it is also used in the treatment of prostatic cancer. And genetic mutations that are important in the pathogenesis of prostatic cancer are BRCA2, very important, then HOXB13, P10 and TP53 mutations. Now there is a lesion which is considered to be a precursor for the prostatic carcinoma. So in approximately 80% of the cases, prostatic tissue removed for carcinoma, it also showed a presumptive precursor lesion which is known as prostatic intraepithelial neoplasia high grade. So the prostatic intraepithelial neoplasia, just like we studied CIN, VIN, VAIN, so this is prostatic intraepithelial neoplasia, that is the neoplasia, the proliferation of cells is limited within the gland and there is no breach of the basement membrane. So this is PIN, and PIN is of two types, low grade and high grade, and high grade prostatic intraepithelial neoplasia is considered to be a precursor lesion in some cases of prostatic carcinoma, and once the basement membrane is invaded, it is called frank adenocarcinoma. So the adenocarcinoma prostate, grossly, it is seen as a greyish white, hard, gritty tumor which is seen in the peripheral zone of the prostate, and since it is seen in the peripheral zones, it is useful because when we do the PR examination, then prostatic carcinoma can be detected early because the growth is seen posteriorly in the peripheral zones. So when it enlarges, so it can be easily felt by the per rectal examination. And you can see this is the transverse section of prostate, and this is the prostatic urethra. This is slit like, and here you can see these greyish white growths which are spread in the prostatic tissue. So this is the prostatic carcinoma. So they will be seen as irregular greyish white hard lesions in the prostate. Now microscopically, the most important pattern is it is a adenocarcinoma. So tumor cells will be arranged in the form of glands, and these glands are typically smaller than the benign glands. So they are generally, the benign glands, they are generally large, cystically dilated with secretions inside, while these glands, they are smaller than the benign glands. Very important point is that they are lined by a single uniform layer of cuboidal to low columnar epithelium. The outer basal layer is absent, and this is the most important point to identify a prostatic adenocarcinoma. Malignant glands may be admixed with numerous benign glands, and sometimes it poses as a diagnostic challenge, especially in the TURP specimens. And perineal invasion is also an important microscopic feature. So again, this is the microscopy of prostatic cancer. So see, these are the normal glands which are lined by double layer epithelium, inner cuboidal, inner columnar and outer cuboidal to basal to flattened layer of cells. So these are double layered normal glands. Again, this is the normal gland, while these are the cancerous glands, and they are lined by a single layer of epithelium, and these are the tumor cells which are lining the gland. See, this is single lining epithelium of the gland. These are the cancerous glands. Again, in this higher power, we can see this is a malignant gland and is lined by a single layer of atypical epithelial cells. So the microscopy has two most important points. First is that the cells will be atypical. These are the tumor cells, so they will be atypical. They will be pleomorphic, they will be hyperchromatic, they will have prominent nucleoli, they will show pleomorphism. And the second important point is that they will be single layer of glandular epithelium, not double layer. If double layer is there, we rule out prostatic cancer. The lining should be single layered. So this is the important point about the microscopy of prostatic cancer. Another important point is that there are certain immunohistochemical markers for the basal layer. So basal layer can be immunostained by keratin 34 beta E12 and P63, and in case of adenocarcinoma, this stain will be absent because there is absence of the basal cell layer, and it will support the diagnosis of adenocarcinoma. And there is another stain, Amaker. Amaker is alpha methyl acyl coenzyme racemase, and this enzyme, this immunostain stains the adenocarcinoma cells. So these immunostains are important for the diagnosis of prostatic adenocarcinoma. Now, in approximately 80% of the cases, prostatic tissue is removed for carcinoma. It shows presence of high-grade PIN. So these are the presumptive precursor lesions for prostatic carcinoma. And what is the morphology of PIN? PIN consists of benign, large prostatic acini, which are lined by cytologically atypical cells. So these cells are atypical, and they will show a complex architecture also, and there will be stratification of the cells, but the basement membrane will be intact, and along with that the basal layer will be present. So there will be a patchy layer of basal cells and an intact basement membrane. To label it as PIN glands. And if we see PIN glands, then in a patient of prostatic biopsy, then close follow-up is important because it may progress to prostatic adenocarcinoma. Now next we come to the spread of the prostatic carcinoma. So the prostatic carcinoma can extend locally because of the periprostatic tissue, seminal vesicles, and base of the urinary bladder. So it can locally spread to these tissues, and metastasis can also occur via lymphatics to the obturated nodes and eventually to the para-aortic nodes. Then another important point is that hematogenous spread, it can occur chiefly to the bones, particularly the axial skeleton in the descending order of frequency, like lumbar spine is affected the most, followed by proximal femur, then pelvis, thoracic spine, and ribs. So the bony mets of the prostatic tumor, they are typically osteoblastic. So they will be forming bones, and on X-ray they will be seen as whitish opaque lesions. So such lesions are called osteoblastic lesions, like this. If they are destroying the bone, they appear like these dark areas, then they are called osteolytic lesions. So the secondaries of prostatic carcinomas, they are osteoblastic. Again, it is an important question for MCQs. So this is a little piece of information about the different types of metastatic deposits, some of which are lytic and some of which are blastic. So osteolytic secondaries are seen in case of carcinomas of lung, kidney, colon, and thyroid. So here the secondaries, they will eat up the bone. So the in the X-ray the lesion will appear like this, like radiolucent, and the tumors of prostate, the tumors of stomach and bladder, it produces osteoblastic secondaries, which means bone forming. So bone forming secondaries, they will appear radio opaque in the X-ray. And another important MCQ question is that the breast cancer secondaries, they are both lytic as well as blastic. So they are called mixed type of bony metastasis. It will produce both osteolytic lesions as well as osteoblastic lesion. So this information is very important for Viva as well as for MCQs. Now next we come to the grading of prostatic carcinoma. So there is a new Gleason grading system which has been modified recently. So there are different morphological patterns that we can see in the prostatic carcinoma. So those patterns are graded 1 to 5. They are given scores 1 to 5, and the most frequent scores, the two most frequent scores, they are added to give the Gleason score. So for example, these are the different morphological patterns. Like I told you, the most common morphological pattern, that is gland formation. So if there are small uniform glands, we give it a score of 1. If there is more space between these glands, the glands are more widely spaced, then we give it a score 2. If there is infiltration of the cells from the glands at the margins, we give it a score 3. Then if there is raggedly outlined and infiltrating fused glands, then we give it a score of 4. and if there is mostly solid growth, we give it a score of 5. So now they have made various prognostic groups. So based on the microscopy, we give the what prognostic group this tumor belongs to. So Gleason, if there is a score of 6 or less, then we give it a Gleason grade group 1. So it becomes a low grade cancer then. If it is a grade group 2, so there is a score of 3. That is, most common pattern in the tumor is pattern 3, and second most common pattern is pattern 4. The score is 7. So it is a medium grade cancer. So this grouping is based on the morphological pattern which we see on the microscopy, and based on these patterns, the prognosis of the patient is given. Like in grade group 4, the score of 8 is there and it is a high grade cancer, and if the score of 9 to 10 is there, then it is again a high grade cancer. So these are the prognostic groups, and these have been recently added in the Gleason scoring system. So for example, this is a prostatic adenocarcinoma, and this is a Gleason score 1 plus 1, that is 2. So it will come in the first group, that is a score of 6 or lower. Now in this, you see these are the prostatic adenocarcinoma. These are the glands, and there is some space in between these glands. And if this pattern is most prevalent, then the score will be 2 plus 2. So likewise, we give the scores. Again, this is the third pattern, where the tumor cells are seen infiltrating in the periphery, and the glands are more widely spaced. So again, these are the fused glands, and this is pattern 4, and this is pattern 5, where we generally see the solid sheets of cells. There is no gland formation. So it is important for the prognosis of prostatic adenocarcinoma. Now the stage is also very important. So stage T1 is when the tumor is clinically inapparent, and it will be it is inapparent clinically, and we can visualize it by palpation or by the imaging studies. Second stage is when there is a palpable or visible cancer confined to the prostate. It is limited to the prostate. And in the third stage, there is local extraprostatic extension to the adjacent areas. And in T4, there will be invasion of the contiguous organs, supporting structures, including the bladder, neck, rectum, external sphincter, levator muscles, or pelvic floor. So this is the staging of prostate, and grade and stage, they are the best prognostic predictors for prostatic adenocarcinoma. So in the diagnostic workup, we do the clinical examination, clinical signs and symptoms we note. Then we do the per-rectal examination, and since this is seen in the peripheral zone, so it is easy to palpate a prostatic carcinoma, and it is also diagnosed early because of the early clinical sign of the prostatic enlargement in the peripheral zone. Then we do the ultrasound, then we do the needle biopsy, which is sent for histopathology, and the PSA levels. So few words about the PSA. Again, PSA is important. Prostatic specific antigen. It is secreted by the luminal cells of the prostatic glands, and it is chemically, it is a serine protease in nature, and the function of PSA is that it helps in the liquefaction of the semen. It is a tumor marker which is useful in the diagnosis, prognosis, and monitoring of the treatment. So we can add the serum PSA level in the panel of investigation for prostatic adenocarcinoma. So the normal serum PSA levels, they are less than 4 nanogram per milliliter, and if they are highly raised, then we can suspect a patient of having prostatic adenocarcinoma. Although it is raised in prostatic malignancy, it rises there, but sometimes false positive results can be seen in certain other conditions like prostatitis, infarction, and instrumentation of the prostate. So it is not a specific marker, but it is a sensitive marker. Lastly, the key points of the carcinoma prostate. So carcinoma prostate is a common cancer of older men between 65 to 75 years of age. Carcinomas of the prostate arise commonly in the outer peripheral zone, very important. So it may be palpable by the per-rectal examination. And microscopically, they are adenocarcinomas with variable differentiation. Neoplastic glands, they are lined by single layer of cells. This is very important. And basal layer is absent. The important characteristic feature is absence of the basal layer in the microscopy. Then grading of the prostatic cancer is done by the Gleason system, and it is very important for the prognosis of the patient. Bony metastasis is seen and it is often osteoblastic. Then serum PSA measurement is useful, but imperfect cancer screening test. It can be used as a adjunct to the diagnostic panel, but it is not entirely diagnostic. Then evaluation of the PSA concentration after treatment has great value in monitoring. So for monitoring we can use PSA levels, because with the correct treatment the PSA levels will gradually they will go down. So thank you very much.